What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 28 of the Chat It Up podcast. Hope you all had a wonderful 4th of July weekend. Unfortunately, today it's back to reality, but hopefully this episode can ease the pain a little bit. As always, I'm your host, Shooter, bringing you interviews, news, and reviews about all things Upper Peninsula. I have a really great episode for you guys this week, but before we jump into this week's interview, we'll run through a few segments. So we're going to start things off with Yooper News. My first piece of Yooper News is the 41st Annual Hiawatha Music Fest, which that's coming up. It will run from July 19th through the 21st. If you've never attended the festival, it features traditional acoustic American music in just about every genre you could think of. So blues, Cajun, gospel, bluegrass, the list goes on and on. They also have a lot of vendors and activities and stuff going on, so it really is an event for the whole family. It's held out at Tourist Park in Marquette, so you do have the option to camp if need be. For more info on tickets and the event lineup and such, head over to hiawathamusic.org, or you can call 906-226-8575. Also want to give a special shout out to the executive director of Hiawatha, who was the guest for episode 18 of the podcast, Miss Susan Devine. She and the whole Hiawatha crew really are an asset not only to the community but really to the whole UP. So don't miss out on this event. The music is always outstanding and it's a really great time. Speaking of podcast guests, my next piece of Yooper News is about my guest from episode 2, sociolinguist Dr. Will Rankinen. He's giving lectures again this summer about UP words and Yooper identity based on his studies and surveys of the Yooper dialect. I know he recently spoke at Peter White Library in Marquette, and coming up on Wednesday, July 10th, he's going to be speaking in Iron Mountain right downtown at the beautiful Braumart Theater. That lecture starts at 7 p.m., admission's free, and the concession stand will be open. So I know I'm planning on attending that one, so if you happen to go to the event on Wednesday, stop by and say hi and learn some really cool stuff from Dr. Will about how Yoopers talk, eh? My last piece of Yooper News is the 60th anniversary of the famous film Anatomy of a Murder. Now, this courtroom drama, obviously, as I'm sure many of you know, is considered an absolute classic, and it was a box office smash when it debuted in 1959. It's based on a novel of the same name from a very famous Ishpeming native, John Volker. Volker was a Michigan Supreme Court justice, and he had based his novel that he wrote on a murder case in Big Bay that he experienced when he was the DA there in the early 1950s. Speaking of Big Bay, the film was most notably shot at the Lumberjack Inn up there, but the entire film was actually filmed throughout Marquette County in a few different locations. I know that they recently had a showing of the movie in the Marquette County Courthouse, which I think is just really cool. I wish I could have attended that, but I just think that it's a really cool piece of Yooper history that is celebrating 60 years. So speaking of Yooper history, it's time for This Day in Yooper History, which is brought to you by the good folks at pasty.com and the Pasty Central Facebook page. Again, that's pasty.com and the Pasty Central Facebook page. So here it is, This Day in Yooper History, July 8th.
Pasty Central Day in History, July 8th. On this day in 1850, in the Mormon settlement on Beaver Island at the north end of Lake Michigan, James J. Strang was crowned king. The residents of the island were followers of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, over which Strang claimed to be the reigning monarch. On this day in 1870, at Clifton, Michigan, site of the Clift Mine in the Keweenaw Peninsula, the North America Mine Post Office was closed after 2 decades of service. It was reopened by Daniel C. Brockway, postmaster, 2 years later. Finally, on this day in 1966, another post office opened in the UP at Christmas, Michigan, chosen as the issuing site of the official 1966 Christmas postage stamp. Pasty Central Day in History, July 8th.
All right, thanks again to the folks at pasty.com and the Pasty Central Facebook page for this day in Yooper history. It's time for this week's interview, and I have to admit that this one is a pretty special one for me. It's my work mom, as I call her, Chris VanAbel. Chris is the CFO at Vast, and she has worked at the agency for 50 years. Her story is genuine, interesting, and most of all, it's really inspiring, but I'll just let her tell it. So, without further ado, let's chat it up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 28 of the Chat It Up podcast. I'm sitting here with, feels weird saying my friend, so my boss, my confidant, Chris VanAbel. Chris, thank you for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Scott.
So I'll just jump right into things with you here. So you're born and raised here in Marquette. You're a born and raised Youper. When you think back on growing up in Marquette, what sort of memories come to mind for you?
I had a great childhood. I really did. We lived a block away from Lake Superior.
Okay.
So we had an opportunity to spend an awful lot of time at the beach. And it was the time I can remember that we'd leave the house at 8 a.m. and not come back till dinner time. And nobody worried. Nobody thought about it. Nobody was wondering if we had drowned at the lake or whatnot. You know. We did a lot of activities just with the kids in the neighborhood.
Sure.
We didn't have to go out to do things. We played kick the can, we played hide and seek, we played dodgeball, all of those types of things as well. The Plustra was just a few blocks away from our house as well. So in the wintertime, we spent a lot of time there ice skating because it was free. We could walk. So those types of things. We had a camp down on Lake Superior down by the Shelter Bay, Deer Lake area.
Okay.
My gram did, so we spent an awful lot of time down there and picking blueberries.
Awesome.
I did a lot of babysitting just in the neighborhood when I was growing up.
Sure.
And then, of course, we lived close enough, walked back and forth to school.
Yeah.
So things were great.
I'm glad that you mentioned the babysitting because, at least from what I know of your story, it was the babysitting that kind of led to really your kind of first job working here at the insurance agency, right?
It absolutely was. I did babysit for a couple of summers for one of the moms in the neighborhood, and this particular summer in 1969, her boys were old enough now that they truly didn't need a babysitter. She happened to work at a local insurance agency, and they happened to be looking for a file clerk. So the timing was great. She says, "Chris, would you be interested? Earn a couple bucks just for the summer?" I says, "Yeah, if you don't need me for babysitting, that'd be great."
Sure.
So that's kind of how it started, and I guess the rest is history, you could say.
Right. Okay, so that's way back in 1969. You were 16 years old. What was the name of the agency at that point in time? There's been a lot of name changes.
There has been a lot of name changes, but back then it was Peters, Larson, and Rako.
Okay. And where was the agency actually located?
Actually, still on Front Street, but it was 113 North Front Street.
Okay,
so just up the hill.
Just up the hill. So what would be in that spot now?
It's where the where Steinhaus.
Okay. Yep.
Restaurant is.
Right in there. Okay.
Right in that exact area.
So people that aren't familiar, and then they'll know that reference, that's where Steinhaus is. Okay.
Absolutely.
So when did the agency then end up actually moving into this building? It probably was in the 70s?
1979.
Okay.
We actually did. We had kind of outgrown our space up there. It wasn't a real big office at that time.
Sure.
And two of the owners built this building.
Okay. So when you started here in 1969 and you're a file clerk, what exactly does a file clerk do? What was your day-to-day type of stuff that you did while you were here?
Well, we filed. We had a lot of paper files and a lot of file cabinets that went on and
Just
on
cabinets
and on.
everywhere?
Cabinets everywhere. So I did a lot of filing. I would run errands. I would do the banking. I would go to the post office. Once in a while I would wait on customers, take payments. I did learn at some point to answer the phone. They allowed me to answer the phone. I made their coffee. I cleaned the break room. Sure. Anything that they didn't want to do. And that was in my wheelhouse.
So in this day and age, that's one of those things, or I should say not one of those things, but the things you're describing are a lot of what typically happens when you do an internship. Do you feel like because of your experience then doing that when you were, young, that you're kind of giving back or giving those opportunities with the internships that we have here at the office? Because it seems like, at least since I've started here, there's always somebody that young that has that opportunity for an internship.
You're absolutely right, Scott. It did. Although at the time, when I first started, I didn't consider myself an intern.
Sure.
I was a file clerk.
Right.
But somebody else made that same point to me, and it was absolutely. It was a great way for somebody to get in, learn the industry, kind of like I did.
Yeah.
So
you were an intern before there were interns.
Before there were, there you go. Spot on. Exactly. Right.
So when you finished high school, were you still working here at the agency and like going to college, or were you just exclusively working here? What did that look like?
Well, after that first initial summer, I thought it was a one-time deal. Okay, and I thought when I went back to school, I would have been a junior then, that would have been it. Mm-hmm. Well, the need was still there, and they wanted to expand my duties a little bit, so they wanted to know if I would continue to work after school, which I did. So I finished high school, my junior and senior year, working during the school year and then in the summers.
Sure.
So then the plan was going to be, I'd graduate and I'd go to college. Mm-hmm. My dream was to be either teacher or nurse. Well, at the time, money was a little tight.
Sure.
Both my parents were working, and we were going to put ourselves through school if we wanted to go. So I thought, well, they asked me if I'd like to come work full time, and I thought, for a couple of years, maybe I might as well earn a few more bucks, continue to save, and start to maybe, put away for college, okay? So that was kind of the plan, okay? At the same time, right after graduation, I got engaged.
Oh, okay.
So that kind of put a different little twist to it as well.
Okay.
So I just, the more I worked, the more I learned the industry, the more I was enjoying myself. And it's like, well, you know what? Let's give this a shot.
Sure.
So then school was kind of on the back burner with always the thought, well, I'll go. And unfortunately, that's one thing that I do regret. I wish I had gone. But it worked out fine. Things worked out okay. It worked out okay, so so we were good. But that's kind of how that came about.
So were you and Jeff high school sweethearts then?
We were.
Okay, that was one of my questions. Was I wasn't sure when exactly you and Jeff met. I mean, I've known you for 7 years, but there's a lot of little things about your personal life that I don't really know. So that was one thing.
Sure.
So
I did meet him in high school.
Okay.
I was a sophomore. He was a junior. Okay, and I actually asked him out.
Oh wow. Okay.
We had what was called the twerp. It's kind of way back in the day, the Sadie Hawkins
dance. Yeah, Sadie
Hawkins. Where the girl asked the guy.
Yeah.
So I actually asked him out first.
Okay.
And fortunate, he said yes. So we've been together ever since. Got engaged right after high school.
Yeah.
Married a year after that.
Okay.
And we just celebrated our 47th wedding anniversary in May.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's awesome. So congratulations for that. That's very, very cool.
Thank you.
So I'm trying to picture what the office was like back in those days, and I can't help but picture the TV show Mad Men, which I don't know if you've watched Mad Men, but guys in suits, like the 3-piece suits, and smoking cigarettes and the mini bars in their offices, and that type of thing. Does my mental picture hold true to really what the office kind of looked like back in those days?
Spot on.
Spot on?
Spot on. All of the guys, you're absolutely right, wore suits, and in fact, we insured a department store right down around the corner from us, and he would come up, and I can remember him coming up and even measuring the guys for their trousers and that kind of fun stuff. Absolutely,
Okay.
They were good friends.
Yeah.
Smoking at the desks.
Yes.
Even the women.
Wow.
I know. I mean, I can remember the first time I walked in, and one of the ladies that was working there they had ashtrays right on their desk. It was crazy. The mini bars, I really don't remember.
No.
I mean, they may have had them, but back in the early days, I was well protected from that.
Sure. So, I mean, you started as the file clerk, but I know that you've really kind of sat in almost every seat in this office as your career has kind of progressed. Can you kind of walk me through that progression a little bit, or how the things kind of changed for you over the years?
Sure. As I said, I did start as a file clerk. That was pretty much the 2 years that I was still in school. That's pretty much what my duties entailed and whatnot. And then when they asked if I would stay on, I became what they called a CSR back in the days, or customer service representative. and working primarily at that time in our personal lines department.
Okay.
And at that time, believe it or not, we actually underwrote, rated, and wrote our own homeowners policies.
Oh, wow.
And typed them up. I mean, typed them
Okay,
up
so
on
you
typed
just
up
on
the
a typewriter. Okay.
policies for the company and whatnot.
Wow.
So that's kind of where I started, was in the personal lines team. And then after a few years of that, I transitioned into still CSR, but on our commercial side of the house.
Sure.
Okay. So I worked for a few years there, and then we actually had an opportunity to underwrite a special program for restaurants and bars throughout the UP. And we did that in conjunction with the MLBA, the Michigan Liquor and Beverage Association.
Okay.
And again, we actually acted as the company, all right?
Wow.
We underwrote the bars of the restaurant, okay? We quoted them. We typed the policy, and we did all of the day-to-day servicing and made all the changes and whatnot, okay? And I actually kind of oversaw that. That kind of lived in my world, if you will. You know, so that was on the commercial side, and then I transitioned into sales, commercial sales. Okay. Pretty much up until 1997. That's when I started that's when we became partners. And as I started more into a leadership role, I did have a book of business for a period of time. But as the agency continued to grow, I was able to spend less and less time on that book of business.
Did you feel kind of, as you were trying out these different roles, did you feel kind of more inclined to liking sales as opposed to service? Or were you kind of just finding your groove? Or did you just kind of naturally gravitate towards it? Or did you just kind of move chairs as things kind of opened up or progressed for you?
The service going from personal to commercial primarily was a need because of the new program that I explained to you about. Okay, going into sales, that was a natural progression if I wanted to continue my career and perhaps sit in a leadership role. Okay, that was just the way things were done. Okay, so I knew if I did want to advance, I had to make that leap. Okay, I didn't want sales. I didn't like sales. I wasn't great at sales. Okay, that's not my forte. I'm much better backstage, working with the team and working with our clients and stuff. But I had to. I had no choice. So I did it begrudgingly. I did okay, but trust me, I was that was not where I really wanted and needed to be.
Well, a couple of things there. Kudos to you, number one, for obviously realizing your strengths and your weaknesses, but also it's nice to hear that from the standpoint of even back when you were kind of starting out, that you were able to have multiple careers, so to speak, under one roof and kind of find your path. The way things still continue to be on a, here on a daily basis, where there's always an opportunity to grow and change and kind of find your path all underneath one roof, where it's not like you have to bounce from company to company the way a lot of people in today's job market kind of have to do. So obviously that's kind of rare. You don't hear that at a lot of places, but to hear it happening not only now but also back then is kind of cool. You talked obviously, you just mentioned about finding a path to a leadership role, and obviously many women in the workforce have experienced the glass ceiling, for a lack of a better term. And thankfully, there's been a lot of strides with kind of doing away with that, in our culture this day and age. But a good chunk of your career and in your progression was kind of in that era. Do you feel like you had any sort of that experience of like a glass ceiling, so to speak, or was that not really prevalent here as you were kind of making your...
No, it was. I mean, like it or not, Scott, at the time, especially in the early days when I first started, and then in the 70s and whatnot, it was really a male-dominated industry, and our agency was no exception. All right. When I initially started, there were 2 bosses, and then it expanded and became 3 and 4. They were always males. Okay, there was never any women in leadership roles. Number one, all of our salespeople were men. Okay, everybody that's at the desk were women. We were considered secretaries. And I hate to use the word subordinate, but sometimes that's
how
we felt.
Yeah.
That's how we felt. We were there to work with them. Or for them.
For them. Yeah.
For them. We didn't work with them. We didn't work alongside them. We worked with them.
Sure.
Okay. And it was tough. And even there was a couple of ladies back in the day and whatnot. They called them office managers, but it was a title.
Sure.
They didn't get to manage
Sure.
or make decisions. I mean, that was still done at the ownership and leadership level and stuff. And not only our agency, but the entire industry.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, I can remember back in the day when just starting, like, getting some education. That was one thing that it was not a big deal.
Sure.
To the owners of the agency. You know, so we kind of had to push and press and prod.
Yeah.
So when I had the opportunity to go, I'd go to these classes, but you look around the room and it wasn't that often or pretty often that I was the only woman in the class.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
or in the seminar or in the whatnot and stuff. And that was tough. That was really, really tough and whatnot. But it was what it was, not just insurance. There were other industries back in the day like that.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
so you just kept your head down. You just did what you had to do and,
Sure.
you know, trust that things were going to turn around.
It's interesting to think about it that way, because now I would say you could make the argument that much of the insurance industry is female dominated. When I first started here, I was the only guy on the personal insurance team, and now we have a very even mix, but I was the only guy. You know, if you go to the CSR convention for auto owners down in Lansing, a lot of times there's maybe a handful, I would say 10 men or less in a completely dominated field. So it's interesting to see that kind of paradigm shift, where I would say this day and age it's definitely more female-led, you know, leadership, calling the shots, that type of thing.
I'll agree with you to a certain point.
Yeah.
We have definitely made great strides.
Yeah.
Absolutely. To the points that you just made, our office here, you're right. I mean, you know, we have just as many great guys as we do great ladies and,
Sure.
and whatnot. But I still experience it
Really?
out there.
Okay.
At different functions, I mean, trust me, again, we've been making great strides, and
Yeah.
there are a lot more women involved, okay? At the leadership level, not so much.
Really? Okay.
Not so much. I mean, again, we continue to, and there are some
Yeah.
great women that are paving the way, and it's much better than it was 50 years ago.
Sure.
You know, but we still have a ways to go.
Well,
We still have a ways to
I
go.
appreciate your perspective on that, because obviously a lot of people probably don't get a look at the behind the curtain, so to speak, at leadership levels of certain companies and different things. I know I obviously a lot of times don't get a look at that, so I can appreciate your perspective there.
And exactly right. And too, like you said, you don't get a lot of experience, and you're speaking from experience here.
Sure.
Now, where we are kind of, you know, I mean, I don't want to say we look for it, but there is just as many females at the leadership level as there is males. Okay, it's always been that way, and it's always been an equal thing.
Sure.
It wasn't, even if you had men and women, it wasn't that, you know, the guys were here and the women were, that's never ever
Sure.
been that. You've seen it in different levels of management leadership throughout the few years that you've been here and stuff. So I think, not that we're the exception, but I think we do a really good job at being open-minded. And, you know, if the right person presents himself, it doesn't matter, a female or a male. We're
Sure.
going to take the best person for the position or the job.
Yeah, I would agree with you completely. I've certainly kind of seen that hands down, and a lot of that is another kudos to you, and it's having that transparency. Because a lot of other companies, maybe there isn't that transparency. I don't know, because I'm not involved in those companies, but all I can do is comment on what I've personally seen. And here, it's always been an open door policy, and you're always very open and upfront with every last person in this building as to, you know, how things are operating, you know, who's doing what roles, and that type of thing. So, you know, I appreciate that a lot.
Sure.
So, you know, in the middle of you kind of building your career, you're also raising a family really at the same time too. How do you manage that balancing act?
It was tough. It was a lot tougher back then
Mm-hmm.
than it is today, okay? particularly in the early days, it was tough enough just being in the workforce as a woman.
Right.
Not even just the insurance industry,
Right.
but being in the workforce and being a career woman.
Sure.
I mean, that was not something that everybody smiled upon. More often than not, it was
Right.
like, you need to be home with your children and stuff. So that was tough. Not having a lot of support and encouragement from leadership or bosses back in the day. I mean, you were expected to be at work, and too bad if you had a sick kid, or too bad if you had a program at school. Flex time or flexible scheduling, that wasn't even a discussion. That wasn't even
Right.
And at the same time, when we started having our kids, my husband decided to open his own business.
Right.
So we opened a small electrical contracting firm, which he worked, and then I did the books at night and on the weekend.
Wow, okay. I did not know that
Yep,
portion. So
yep.
there's something else I'm learning new
There
about
you go. Yeah. So we did that for quite a few years and stuff. So it was hectic, but I thrive under pressure, number one. Okay. I'm a great multitasker, great organization. I love lists, so I can cross them off and whatnot,
Sure.
And we had our two girls 7 years apart, so that helped.
Sure.
There was good and bad, but by the time I had my youngest one, my other one was 7, so she was able to help.
Sure.
With the babies. And being born and raised here, my whole family's here, as was Jeff's.
Yep.
So that kind of, but I'm not going to lie. I mean, there were some long days and some
I bet.
long weekends and nights, but it was our choice. We wanted to do
True.
that, so you do what you have to do.
Yeah. Well, and thankfully, both of you have family very close by. A few of the other women that I've had on the podcast that I've kind of asked that same question too, of how they manage or balance the juggling act of career and family, and it keeps coming back to it takes a village. Mm-hmm. So having that support system close by seems paramount, in the grand scheme of things. On top of that, did you have any kind of like mentors along the way to kind of point you down that path, or that you could rely on or kind of go to?
I did. My very first mentor, very first one, and more importantly though, my friend, was Bill Hetrick. Okay. Bill joined the agency in 1975, and he quickly became the one person that I could turn to, the one person that would always be in my corner. I could count on him, okay, even though he came in already at a leadership role, okay, he had a different style, different values than some of our current, or some of the current
Yes.
leaders and
Yep.
stuff, So I was lucky to have him. Okay, I mean, there were some tough days when it's like, I can't do this anymore.
Sure.
And he would be there and say, yeah, you can. Yeah, so he was my very first one. I've also had the privilege of working with a number of individuals in the industry. Roger Sitkins, Larry Linney.
Sure.
They were both, consultants for the insurance agencies. Tom Doran from Reagan Consulting, I've been very, very fortunate. And also, in 1997, when I did become a partner, it was Bill, myself, and then Scott White.
Right.
And Scott had been around. He had come back in 1988. He started. And he, again, came in, that male type thing, came in with a equity position to
Sure.
be a partner and whatnot. Well, in 1997, when the two of them asked me to join them, and even leading up to that, Scott was right there with Bill. Okay, they treated me as equals. They wanted me to be their partner. There was nothing. It's like, oh, we can't tell Chris because she's a woman, or we can't count on her, or she doesn't know, she can't make a decision. I had none of that.
Okay.
I was fortunate. I was one of the most fortunate people in the world to have two great male partners.
Sure, absolutely. And that's an interesting dynamic too. Again, not something that you would kind of see every day in most businesses, I would suspect.
No, and again, my mentors were not women, because there wasn't a lot of women to be a mentor.
Right.
To have for a mentor and stuff.
Yeah. And that was kind of why I had that question, because I was kind of curious, like you said, in a male-dominated world, that if there was anybody at that point in time that you could kind of go to that was female. One of the things that I've admired most about you and really the other leadership here, the Bill Hetricks and the Scott Whites of the world, are that you're constantly working on being better. Whether it's the fact that we all read a book every single year here in the office together, or you guys are attending summits or conferences or different things. Do you feel like that's kind of a part of the secret sauce to your success, is always kind of trying to get better? I mean, do you think that that's part of what makes being a great leader?
Absolutely. I'm not sure that it's the secret sauce per se, Scott. To be honest with you, I think the very first thing is just to care.
Sure.
To care for your partners, to care for your team, to care for your clients, and care for your communities, okay? I think that is key to being successful in anything you want to do, okay? And then on top of that, just do the right thing. Even if it's tough, do the right thing. But in addition, as you well said, you need to continue to learn. You need to continue to read. You need to continue to challenge yourself. You know as well as I do that we've got a young, energetic, talented team here, Scott. And there are days you guys scare the hell out of me. You guys are so smart, and you challenge me every single day. But that's great, because I then continue to challenge myself to get better.
Sure.
So I think it's a combination of all of those things that really help someone to be a good leader. Someone that, you don't have people work for you. You have people that work with you and alongside you. Okay, I've always hated the boss word.
Sure.
Hated that word.
Fair enough. I guess part of why I posed that question the way that I did is, in the 7 years that I've been here, we've experienced a lot of highs together. And it's one of those things where I feel like it would be very easy to rest on your laurels. And we do a good job of celebrating the victories, the day-to-day victories, the small ones and the big ones. But like I said, the one thing that I kind of always think of is that we've never rested on our laurels for too long. We're always kind of like, okay, we did great, but we can be that much better. And so that's kind of why I posed that question to you. But those other points that you bring up are all so very true about, caring and doing the right thing. And those kind of all fall right in line with what I feel, are our core values here. Kind of circling back a bit to Bill Hetrick, he retired in 2011.
Yep.
And the agency had changed its name to VAST in 2010. Can you talk a little bit about that whole kind of transition? Because I still get people that say Hetrick and Associates. That was a household name. So obviously changing that name is a big deal, especially in a small town.
It was a big deal. And it was probably one of the hardest decisions that we've made. The agency had gone through multiple name changes, as you indicated, since I started, and because every time a new owner came on, they added his name.
Yeah, you throw their name up on there.
Throw your name up on the list and whatnot, okay? Well, then in 1997, when Scott and I became partners, it was like, okay, so what is it going to be? Hetrick, White, VanAbel, White, Hetrick. And it's like, at that, Scott and I didn't really care if our name was on the door or not.
Sure.
We didn't really. Bill Hetrick was the face of this community. He was the face of this agency, okay? We often said that Hetrick Bill was the face of the community. I was the face internally, and Scott was the face in the industry.
Sure.
And it worked out well. We complemented each other so well. So when we became partners, it's just like, it's Hetrick and Associates, and we're good. We're good with that, okay? So, like you said, that was back in 1997. Well, then, when we fast forward, and Bill announces his retirement a year or two before he's actually going to do it. And it was actually his idea.
Really?
Said, yes. He said, we need to change the name.
Okay.
I'm not going to be here. Okay. So put you and Scott on. And again, that wasn't even an option for us. Okay. So we decided that, okay, it took Scott and I a long time to get there because we were adamant not to change it. But Bill was just as adamant that we were going to. Okay. So we said, okay, fine. All right. But a couple of things have to happen. We have to do it while Bill is still here, because we didn't want people to think, okay, we kick him out the door, now we're changing the name.
Sure.
We laugh about it, but there was some truth there and stuff, okay? We also knew that we did not want anybody's name associated because we didn't know, bringing in new partners and whatnot. And we didn't want to have anything that would tie us geographically to the area. Like people were saying, well, the Superior Agency or, the Great Lake Agency or whatever that looked like and stuff. So once we actually then made the decision we were going to change it, we took it to the team because it was really all about them.
Sure.
I mean, you put any kind of a name on the door you want, but it's the people that are sitting behind the door and stuff. So we needed them to be as engaged as Scott and I and Bill were. And we worked on it for, quite a few months and stuff and went back and forth with different names and stuff. And it was actually our BDC guy back in the day. He was, working on it alongside us. And he said, he says, we're sitting here, we're talking about the vast number of clients we have, the vast number of company partners we have, the vast area, because we covered the whole UP. He says, why don't we just call it VAST? And that's how VAST came to be.
Okay.
So there we were. We introduced it again while Bill was here.
Right.
He was the biggest proponent of it. We had a marketing plan all set. It was a 90-day plan of how we were going to roll it out and stuff. We did something every 30 days till the actual, I think it was October 4th was the actual date.
Sure.
And here we are at VAST.
Here we are. So if you're listening in and it's not an acronym, it doesn't stand for anything. There's the story behind
That's
it.
That's the story behind it. We did have, it's kind of funny, we did have one guy, because people didn't want to know what it stood for.
Right.
Okay. And at the time, of course, Bill was still here, and then I had, so it was Bill, Scott, and myself. So one of our clients called me and said, okay, so does it really stand for VanAbel and some thugs?
That's good. That's very, very good. That's funny. So a few minutes ago, we talked a little bit about kind of the core values here. And when I started at the agency in 2012, one of the things that I was really blown away by is the culture that we have here. We have a lot of fun. We don't take ourselves too seriously. There's a lot of camaraderie. Philanthropically, we're constantly working with the community, all of it. Is that something that like you and Bill and Scott really started to build as of that turning point in the 90s, or is that something that was really kind of ingrained here like prior to that?
I wish I could say it was, but it wasn't.
Okay.
Again, it was a different time.
Sure.
Yeah, not just for us, but for
society.
Business, society in general. You went to work, you got a paycheck and you went home, and that was it. And again, back in the time, there was no time for fun. You got paid to do a job.
Sure.
You do the job. We'll pay you for it, and then you leave. Now, did we have a Christmas party? Heck yes.
Right.
We had a Christmas party. Okay, everybody had a Christmas party. But again, it was something that was planned by the bosses or the owners, which they had the right. They were paying for it and stuff.
Sure. Sure.
But we didn't have an opportunity to kind of give any insight or any suggestions or anything like that. There was no fun spur of the moment type celebrations. If it was somebody's birthday, maybe we'd bring in a cake, but again, not a big deal. There was no rewards, no incentives. We didn't have any committees.
Sure.
and stuff. But as Bill and I, started to form the partnership, and even before it was formal, we started to try slowly, because there was still some walls that had been built up. It's like, no, they don't need to be partying. They need to work. They can party when they go home and stuff. So it wasn't something that was always part of it. But again, with Bill and I and Scott being partners, and going back to your comment about our core values, we are very much aligned in all of those things and whatnot. And to your point, we all work hard. Okay, the expectation is that everybody will do a really good job, but you got to have some fun along the way. You got to laugh at yourself, and stuff. So that is something that the three of us worked very hard, as did now continuing, through the last few years, and new people come in, and new leadership and different leadership and stuff. It's always been at the top. You got to have some fun.
Yeah,
you just have to.
I would agree with you completely, and we definitely do here on a daily basis. One of the things that has kind of continually come up with my chats with some other people in business for the podcast is a lot of businesses throughout the UP kind of struggle with attracting and retaining young talent, okay? And if you look at the demographics of our office, I'd say we do a pretty awesome job of both attracting and retaining that young talent. Why do you think that we kind of succeed at that?
That's a good question. Because you're right. It's a challenge for every industry.
Yeah.
It really, really is. And I ask that. That is one of the questions that I ask when I'm interviewing.
Sure.
Prospective employees. So why here? Why Vast? Okay. So I think some of their responses are good for, to answer this question as well. I think, Scott, just our reputation in general, okay, in the industry and also in our community.
Sure.
Okay, we have a really good reputation, and we've worked hard at it. Like you said, we don't rest on our laurels. We continue, to grow. We continue to get better. We continue to do more in the community. We encourage all of our people, all of our team, to be involved in something wherever their passion lies. And it's just not money, but it's time and their talent as well. So we hear that a lot, that people will see on our website how involved we are in the community and whatnot. We've always said that we want to be a company of choice in a community of choice. Okay,
Sure.
So looking for those kids that once they graduate from college and it's like, okay, I'm going now because the grass is definitely greener. Okay,
Sure.
Well, they get away for a couple years and not always is it greener.
No.
So they're looking to come back and really want to stay now. So we've been very fortunate in capturing some of that talent that's come back. I think that we have a great hiring process and onboarding. Okay, people hear about our mentoring program that we have here. To your point, you made a couple minutes ago about an opportunity for growth. Just because you come in hired to sit one chair does not necessarily mean that that's the chair that you're going to retire from. It might be. We've had people.
Sure.
They came in as an account manager, sat that chair for 25 years because that's what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then we've had people that have came in as a service person, then a semi-quasi, half sales, half service, and then moving to sales. So I think that people know about that. They hear about that, I think, too, our commitment to education and professionalism. You don't find that a lot.
No.
We look to have opportunities. We try to bring opportunities to the UP to help our people so they don't have to leave to go downstate to get their designations and their education and stuff. I think that's key. And I think finally it's our team. So often when I ask that question again, like I said, to prospective employees, they'll say, well, I know so-and-so on your team. Or, my husband's friends with so-and-so on your team. And they love it here. They don't want to work anyplace else. They say this is a great place to work. And you know what? I want to be here too. So I hope that answers your question.
It does.
I think it's...
No, that definitely does.
A lot of different things.
Yeah. No, I think you hit on some really great points. And what your last kind of answer there where you said you want to be here too kind of leads into my next question. You've been at this for 50 years, and I know how hard it is for you to stay away from the office because I used to sit right outside your desk, so I know even when the calendar says you're not going to be here, you're probably going to pop in. What is it that keeps you hungry, for a lack of a better word, to keep you coming back here day in and day out with the passion and the drive that you have?
I love what I do, okay? And not everybody who's working can say that.
Very
a lot
true.
of people work because they have to. They need a paycheck, okay? Or it's a family thing or whatever that might look like and stuff, And you're right, I don't have to work anymore, okay? I love what I do. I love the people that I do it with. I love being challenged by them. I enjoy their energy. They give me a reason to get up. They give me a reason to continue to want to learn. And I feel so good when we get a compliment about one of our team members who's done something for a client. And
Sure.
that client takes the time and it's like, yeah, we've got good people here. I've been part of that, you know. We celebrate when they get a designation or they make a big sale. I feel good about that because we've been part of, you know, I cry with them when things don't work out.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, to your point, I think you said this, if not today, you said it to me before. It's family. And we're family. And I've been fortunate enough to have a really big family.
A really big family.
A really big
I would
family.
agree. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What does it feel like to have a building named after you?
Crazy. Unbelievable. Amazing. I mean, seriously, first of all, never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be here 50 years. I mean, that never, ever, you know. Yeah. And having a building named after you, it's like, what? No, it's ridiculously crazy. Very humbling. It's pretty cool now that I've had a little bit of time to think about it. It's pretty cool, you know, and whatnot. But yeah, it's nuts.
The look on your face was priceless. I thought you were gonna catch wind of it for sure, but it somehow the stars aligned.
It was perfect. I mean, seriously, and not that I didn't try.
Exactly.
I mean, I tried finding out, and I would drop all these hints, and I'd say, okay, do I have to worry about this, or should I do this? So I knew there was something.
Yes.
Okay, I knew. I really didn't expect that. I mean, I think I said at the team meeting, I thought maybe I'd get a gold watch.
Well, and it goes back to me saying how even when you're off, you still end up coming to the office, because the day they were supposed to put the sign up, I think you weren't actually in the office. I think you were across the street getting your hair or nails done, but you had parked right where they were going to put the sign up, and they had to shoo you away from
here. I know. I
got
got so much grief, you know. I mean, because Scott had said, now, you're off Wednesday. Don't come in. For one day, just don't come in. Stay, get your trailer taken care of. And I says, okay, you really don't want me to come in. And then the next morning, I couldn't come in early either. I mean, I've been gone for 2.5 weeks. You know I'm chomping at the bit to get here.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
So I tried to abide by their rules. But yeah, I was having my hair done. I didn't know. You know? So apparently Scott told Cassie, if she's not gone by 1:30, let me know. I'm having the car towed.
So we're celebrating, 50 years of you working here this year, and we've named the building after you. But you have made it very clear this is not a retirement. You're not riding off into the sunset yet. I do know, you have said though you probably plan to cut back on your hours a little bit.
I am.
Now, it's hard enough for you to stay away from here, so I'm curious to know what you're going to do with this free time if you're going to cut back on your hours.
I am. I seriously, I mean, having Rachel here as our new COO has been a tremendous relief to me. Okay?
Absolutely.
Because I needed to be sure that whoever was here was going to take care of my family. Mm-hmm. And there was no doubt. She's great. Okay.
Absolutely.
So that's helping me with the decision. All right. So my thought right now is I'm going to work 3 days a week.
Okay.
Typically Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and have 4 days off. My husband's just been retired now for probably 15 years. Mm-hmm. So he's ready for me to spend some time with him, some more time with him.
Yeah.
I've got 2 amazing grandkids that love to the moon, and they're getting older.
They're starting to get to the busy age.
Right. So if I don't spend some time now, and whatnot, we've got a camp, so we've got projects up there.
Sure.
So I'm trying to ease into it because, to your point, 50 years of doing this, and then now what am I going to do? Yeah. So I'm thinking easing into it will help.
Sure.
That retirement date will come sooner rather than later. And my dream is that when I retire, I'm going to volunteer in the NIC unit, and I'm going to rock and hold new babies.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
You didn't know that, hey?
I did not know that, but I do know that anytime there's a baby in here, you need to hold it.
Yes. So that is going to be where I'm going to volunteer my time, if not now, definitely when I retire.
Well, that is very, very special. People that work in the NICU are very special people.
They are.
Unfortunately, I know from experience with my sister, and that's another story for another time, but that's very awesome. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? We kind of hit all of you like your lists. I've crossed everything off on my list. So if there's anything else that you wanted to add or kind of throw in here that you felt we didn't really touch on or that you felt worth mentioning.
I think you did a really nice job on, putting things in order and bringing me through,
Sure.
and whatnot. I've been blessed, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a great life. I've had a great career. And that really only happens when you surround yourself with great people.
Yeah.
That love, encourage, and support you all the time. And I've been privileged and honored to have those types of people throughout my life.
Absolutely. I thank you for sharing your story, because it's not a very common one. Not a lot of people can say they work somewhere 50 years, and also, unfortunately, not a lot of women can say that they've kind of broke that glass ceiling and went from file clerk to being a very successful career businesswoman. So I feel that your story is very valuable, and I feel honored to be able to kind of share that with other people out there listening. So to kind of wrap things up here, I don't know if you've actually ever really listened to my podcast before, but my last question I always ask everybody is, how do you like your pasty? With ketchup or gravy, or how do you eat your pasty?
I eat my pasty without ketchup, without gravy. A little bit of butter maybe,
Okay.
and a little bit of salt.
All right.
And that's it.
Any favorites? I don't want to.
No, I love pasties,
You just
so I
love
don't
them
care
from
where
everywhere?
it is.
Okay.
I have no
Fair enough.
preference. Yeah, and the challenge is my family are not big pasty lovers.
Oh, wow,
So I
okay.
get them very seldom. So when I do, it's really a treat for me.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast, Chris. This has been great.
My pleasure, Scott. I'll tell you, there was a little trepidation, but you're absolutely right. Once we got started, it was fun.
Okay, it's time for the takeaways from my chat with Chris. This one was actually a lot tougher than it usually is for me, because, really the whole conversation felt like one big takeaway, but I also experience a lot of what we spoke about on a daily basis. So, I obviously feel very fortunate to be around that on a daily basis, but it also made it tough for me to differentiate between what I enjoyed about our conversation and what I already know and love about VAST and our office culture. But I can say the one thing that really stuck out to me is a need for continued progress for females in the workforce. When Chris said we've made great strides, but we still have a ways to go, that really stuck with me, even a couple of days after our chat. I'll just be honest that I was almost a little bit embarrassed by my comments during that part of the conversation, because I realized that my perspective as a man in a largely male-driven industry was really off base. But the one positive I took away from that is that from our chat is that Chris was able to kind of get me to think about it from the female perspective. And she was absolutely right that, especially at the leadership level, we still have a lot of room for improvement as far as opportunities for females. So my hope is that as more and more of the Chris VanAbels of the world are given the opportunity to step up and crush it, that it will both inspire other women, but it'll continue to open more and more doors. My second takeaway from my chat with Chris is really, really simple, but to me it's really powerful, and that's just to care. It's very easy as we go through the day-to-day routine of our lives to kind of go on autopilot, for lack of a better word, and just kind of go through the motions. But if you can put an emphasis every day on truly caring for the people around you and truly caring about what it is that you do, I feel as though both your personal and professional life are going to reap the benefits. And really, Chris is a textbook example of this. You can hear it in the way that she talks, and at least those of us that can see her on a daily basis and how she operates, you can see it in how she operates. And she genuinely cares about her business and her work partners and her employees and her community, and I could keep going down the list of those things, but experiencing that becomes infectious. And I can truly say that it permeates throughout our building from the top down. So much so as kind of what Chris talked about, where it's just kind of one big family for us. And, that's why I call her my work mom instead of my boss. And, that's why she's somebody that I look up to very much. So my challenge for everybody listening this week is to care. I don't care if it's, putting a little extra time into a project you've been working on, or maybe you reach out to a friend who has been going through a rough patch, or maybe it's as little as picking up a gum wrapper that you see on the ground on your evening walk. Just care. Because if we all care just a little bit more, just imagine what the results could be. Chat It Up is a bi-weekly podcast about all things Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Wherever you're listening in, please subscribe, rate, and leave me a review. You can also find Chat It Up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for listening in. I'm your host, Shooter, reminding you to keep your chin up and your eyes forward.